This is number 4 in a series of videos about Thornbury FM, a small community radio station in Thornbury, South Gloucestershire, in the south-west of England. Thornbury FM broadcast for 28 days, twice a year, under a short-term restricted service licence, SRSL. It started transmitting on 87.7 FM, with simultaneous webcasting in the autumn of 2005, and its final broadcast under that name was its 9th in autumn 2009. This time I want to examine the station's attitude towards the local Chinese community. If you have seen the second video in this series, then you will know that Thornbury FM's original constitution stated that it included all sections of a diverse community in its programming and ownership, that it provided access for the expression of different cultures and languages, that it was opposed to discrimination, and that it removed barriers to social understanding. South Gloucestershire has an officially recognised association for Chinese, the South Gloucestershire Chinese Association, SGCA, which has been in existence since 2001. The SGCA has 200 plus members. Thornbury FM became aware of the SGCA shortly before its second broadcast in spring 2006, because SGCA had recently been given an office in the Chantry, a community centre in Thornbury. I wonder if there was any compatibility between the aims of the SGCA and Thornbury FM. Coming next, a review of both organisations' aims and objectives. What did they both have to say about working in partnership with other groups? They both wanted to work with others. Well, that seemed like a good match. What about participation in community life by individuals? They both supported representatives getting involved. It was a fit. Okay, then how about helping the disadvantaged, especially those whose first language was not English? They both sought to help non-English speakers. They tallied. And creating harmony and cross-cultural understanding? They both endorsed communication between groups. Agreement all round. The SGCA has proven itself willing to participate with other organisations, such as Engage, South Gloucestershire's multicultural project. Various public bodies involved in healthcare. Providing advice to Bristol City Museum. And of course participating in the Corporate Equalities Forum, which was chaired by David Primrose, Vicar of Thornbury and Chair of Thornbury FM. Having a programme on Thornbury FM would have assisted the SGCA to provide advice to the Chinese community in Cantonese and Mandarin on welfare, health and housing issues. It would have enabled it to publicise its organised activities and events to the community. It would have supported the association's Mandarin and Cantonese language tuition programmes. So next, let's find out what Thornbury FM offered the SGCA. Well, until fairly recently, nothing. In videos 8 to 10 in this series, you will learn how Thornbury FM seemed to want to promote Christianity, and that unwritten objective could have appeared to be jeopardized by participation in the station by Chinese, associated with atheism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. In the meantime, Jade Yangpang, until recently the SGCA's community development worker, who has some experience of broadcasting in China, was approached by Bristol community radio station BCFM, and in November 2008 was placed on BCFM's City and Guilds radio production skills course, with a view to there being a Chinese language program on BCFM. Then came some good news and some bad news. The good news was that finally, after 3 years of unnecessary and unjustified prevarication, Thornbury FM gave a weekly hour-long slot to the Chinese Association. And in the spring 2009 broadcast, Jade Yangpang and Jenny Yueng hosted a program on Monday afternoons called Chinese Inclusive.
You are listening to Chinese Inclusive on Thornbury FM with Jade Yangpang. The next 4 weeks, on every Monday between 1 and 2 p.m, I will meet with you on air to enjoy some Chinese music, share some cultures, and meet some local community.
Ironically, one of Jade's programs looked at Chinese converts to Christianity in Bristol. The bad news was that Jade, the main SGCA broadcaster, claimed that she was told not to broadcast in Mandarin or Cantonese. English only was the order from management. This was despite the clause in Thornbury FM's constitution to promote and protect linguistic diversity. Regardless of any arguments about the numbers of Chinese living in Thornbury, the station broadcast over the internet, and Jade and Jenny should have been providing a programme for the Chinese in the wider South Gloucestershire area, rather than merely giving English people an introduction to Chinese culture and the local Chinese community, as happened in spring 2009. The output was monitored in the guise of studio support by resident commissar station manager Alan Mullinex. But in the second pre-recorded programme, one of Jenny's guests felt more comfortable in speaking in Mandarin. So, on Monday the 27th of April 2009, Thornbury FM broadcast in a minority community language for the first time. Here is that momentous occasion.
May, you come from northeastern part of China. Any particular differences about the food from different part of China?
Yes, they have the many different the regions in China, and also they got the different their own styles. Like, do you mind speaking Mandarin?
Yes, please carry on. Go ahead.
Okay, they got 八大菜系，is 有粤菜，还有京菜、川菜，还有湖南菜、山东、江苏、浙江、 福建，还有辽菜啊。
Well, what my wife was saying that there are mainly 8 major cuisine for representing different parts of China.
Other community radio stations allow their Chinese presenters to broadcast entirely in Chinese languages. Sheffield Live, for example.
Hello， 大家晚上好，欢迎大家收听今天的 Sheffield Live 93.2 FM 流声水破华语电台，我是主持人 Virginia，
我是主持人 Jasmine，
我是 Toby。
以下首先进入我们的新闻板块。
Thornbury FM promoted the use of listening via the internet and recently introduced continuous webcasting, so the SGCA should have been allowed to broadcast in Chinese to its members and supporters who are outside the FM reception area and listening online. From autumn 2009, the station's relocation of its transmitter to high ground meant that areas with more of the SGCA's membership were supposed to receive the FM transmission. But the SGCA did not return to broadcast on Thornbury FM. Whilst Jade Yang-pang resigned as employee of the SGCA, Thornbury FM should have supported SGCA to continue on the air. Pressure should be applied to the management of this community radio station. SGCA needs to resume broadcasting because it has a right to broadcast routinely and in Mandarin and Cantonese, and that right is given to it by the station's constitution. Any restriction on minority language broadcasting shows the station management's contempt for democracy, good working practices and cultural diversity. At one stage it seemed already too late, with anything Thornbury FM having to offer being of little interest. That was because, although Jade no longer worked for the SGCA, she had her own 2-hour programme every Wednesday on Bristol community radio station BCFM, where she was allowed to broadcast freely in Mandarin.
Hello, you're listening to Chinese Connection with Jade Yang-pang on Wednesday's drive time. Every Wednesday from 5 to 7 o'clock, you can listen to Chinese Connection here on BCFM 93.2. The next is going to be the weekly news in Mandarin. 欢迎收听中国链接，每周3晚5至7点。
She was not the only Chinese broadcaster on BCFM, as Laura Kam hosted the Multicultural Show for 2 hours on Thursdays. Both these radio presenters have now moved on from BCFM. If Thornbury FM had been committed to its constitutional values, it should have provided support to the SGCA to enable other volunteers to continue where Jade left off, especially with the station's intention to reach listeners in Bradley Stoke, Yate and Chipping Sodbury. However, for a while the Chinese in South Gloucestershire and Bristol already had broadcasters on full-time community radio, on FM and the internet, whilst the vicar and the rest of his tea party were still churning out tired-sounding 28-day broadcasts.
I'm a little lamb who's lost in the wood. I know that I would always be good to one who watched over me. Although he may not be the man some girls think of as handsome, to my heart he carries the key. Won't you tell him please to put on some speed, follow my lead. Oh, how I need someone to walk